everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture, and it is time for another Easter eggs video for season 2 of Doctor Who. This week we are going to be talking about Lucky Day. Before I begin though, unfortunately I didn't time it very well and mine is in the wash, but you can now get your hands on some WhoCulture merch. Below the video you can get to our shop and you can purchase our WhoCulture t-shirts. And as I've mentioned, we will have some more designs coming soon as well, and if you do purchase one, then do tag us in any photos in them because we would love to see them. Anyway, shall we get into the Easter eggs for Lucky Day? Number 29. So the episode opens on New Year's Day 2007, where the Doctor and Belinda arrive in London to do their vindicating. Now on the bin next to them are a bunch of New Year's Eve posters, and also a poster for something called Carols in Camden. Now this is an Easter egg that dates all the way back to the Christmas Invasion, which was the first Christmas special in the modern series. Now if you check the wall behind the 10th Doctor as he stumbles out of the TARDIS at the start of that episode, oh, what's that? Oh yeah, that's right, it's the exact same Carols in Camden poster. In addition, there was also an advert for Carols in Camden on the side of Wilfred Mott's little kiosk in Voyage of the Damned. That's so cool. Number 28. Curious Conrad stumbles across the Doctor's TARDIS and follows him inside a spooky, abandoned shopping mall, where the Shriek marks him for death. Now first of all, we all thought those mannequins were going to be something to do with the Autons, didn't we? Don't lie, you thought it too. We all thought this was going to be an Auton story. And secondly, one of the details in this scene does indeed hark back to an early 2005 revival story. In this case, the 2006 Christmas special, The Runaway Bride. The store Chez Allison, visible just behind Conrad's head at the end of the scene, is the same store that Donna Noble tells the 10th Doctor that she got her wedding dress from. Number 27. So sticking with this scene, and let's talk about the Shriek. Not the Shrek, the Shriek. Although how cool would it be if we did see Shrek in Doctor Who? Next season. So while this is the first time that we've seen the Shriek on screen, their appearance in this episode was cleverly foreshadowed in the 2024 Doctor Who novel Caged, written by Una McCormack. Now in the novel, Ruby describes some of her adventures with the Doctor, and she says, "I've visited other worlds besides yours. I've sung to kings, held space babies, shouted at ambulances, outrun a Shriek." It's a neat reference for fans of the expanded media, and it's a very thoughtful detail by the writers and editors of the book. Number 26. So last week we mentioned a few reused filming locations in The Well, and unsurprisingly there are more this week as well. The abandoned shopping centre that Conrad is walking through here is the same location as the Henrik's department store that we see in Rose. Now it's also the same location as the department store in the 11th Doctor episode Closing Time. And in addition, the alleyway where the TARDIS lands outside of the department store in Lucky Day is the exact same alleyway where the 9th Doctor lands the TARDIS in the Series 1 episode, The Empty Child. So if you thought this looked familiar, that will be why. Number 25. So we don't know his name or his true agenda at this stage, but the episode now introduces us to Jordan Lang, an employee at UNIT. Now the surname Lang is actually something of a Pete McTighe Easter egg, as the character Adam Lang had one of the main roles in McTighe's previous Doctor Who story, Praxeus. Now maybe McTighe even intended for them to be related, or maybe he just likes the surname Lang. Who knows? Number 24 and 23. So Conrad invites Ruby on his podcast, and in his podcast room there's a bunch of newspaper clippings and photographs on the wall. Conrad must be a massive fan of early modern Who, because one of those photographs is a direct screen cap from the Series 2 episode Fear Her, specifically the opening scene where the Doctor does a not so great job at parking the TARDIS. And another one of the photographs is from the Series 1 episode Aliens of London, from the scene where we see the news reports of the London UFO crash. It's always funny when shows and movies use screen captures as supposed in-universe photographs. Number 22. The absolute icon that is Cherry Sunday warns Ruby to be very careful before she heads out on her weekend village trip with Conrad, which Carla explains away by saying she just watched The Wicker Man. Now The Wicker Man is a 1973 folk horror movie about a man who heads to a remote island off the coast of Scotland to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. And while there, he encounters all sorts of strange goings-on, and spoiler alert I guess, he is eventually sealed inside a giant Wicker Man statue statue and burned alive. Now, it's obviously a bit of an exaggerated joke about how Cherry thinks those small country villages are all a bit dodgy. And hey, credit where credit's due. Ruby certainly did encounter a bunch of dodgy people, though they were a lot closer to home than anyone could have realised at this point. Number 21. Conrad takes Ruby to the local pub for a few drinks with his mates, and here we get a cameo from a classic Doctor Who actor. So the man who runs the pub, Alfie, is played by Jericho, who previously played the high-ranking Time Lord Castellan in Arc of Infinity and The Five Doctors. Number 20. It's the return of Kate Stewart. Woohoo! And when she's on the phone to Ruby, she tells her that Mel is busy dealing with something in Sydney Harbour. Now, this is almost certainly something to do with the upcoming spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea, which revolves around UNIT and the Sea Devils. And given that the Sea Devils are aquatic foes, some sort of incident happening at Sydney Harbour would make a lot of sense. Now, The War Between the Land and the Sea has also been co-written by Pete McTighe, who wrote Lucky Day, so you can imagine that he might want to get in a quick nod to his next project in this episode. Now, on the other hand, we don't actually know if Mel is set to appear in The War Between the Land and the Sea, so this could actually be set up for the Season 2 finale, which we do know she will be a part of. Now, Sydney Harbour is where the Sydney Opera House is located, and given all those Earth landmarks floating through space at the end of the robot revolution, maybe there's something happening there related to the season arc, as opposed to the spin-off. Number 19. Kate is still on the phone with Ruby, and on the right-hand side of the shot, you can see a picture of her father, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. The Brigadier was one of the founding fathers of UNIT, and was a key recurring figure throughout much of the classic Doctor Who series, particularly in the 1970s. Now, his last Doctor Who appearance was in the 1989 serial Battlefield, though he did also pop up in an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures in 2008 as well. This particular photo on Kate's desk is actually a promo image from Battlefield, proving that once again Doctor Who characters love using images from the show. Number 18. Conrad reveals himself to be the biggest scumbag in the universe, and we learn that he's not a sweet and innocent podcaster, but rather the leader of a group called Think Tank, which aims to expose the lies perpetuated by UNIT. Now, the name Think Tank harks all the way back to the 1970s and the Fourth Doctor's first story, Robot. Here, the organisation Think Tank was on the surface a perfectly above-board leader in scientific research and robotics, but in reality, its members were part of the Scientific Reform Society, which wanted to reform the world and rule it as a scientific elite, and planned to use the powerful K1 robot to destroy all who oppose them. Now, it's not entirely clear if this is meant to be the same think tank, as the two versions are very, very different. Although, the reveal scene in Lucky Day does feature what appears to be a musical callback to Robot. So make of that what you will, I guess. Conrad. Perhaps Conrad and his allies are deliberately revitalizing an old enemy of UNIT. Regardless, though, of whether or not they're meant to be the same, the Brigadier's description of Think Tank as a bunch of cranks in Robot definitely applies in both cases. Number 17 to number 15. Conrad is still droning on and on about how UNIT lies, and he rattles off a series of Doctor Who monsters that he believes are fake, saying that there are no Cybermen, no Sycorax, and no Yetis in the underground. The Cybermen, of course, big metal robot dudes, probably don't need to explain what those are to you. The Sycorax, though, are a bit more obscure. They were the villains in the 2005 Christmas special, The Christmas Invasion, and they conducted a very public invasion of planet Earth, so it does make sense for Conrad to bring them up here, as they're one of the aliens the general public would be most familiar with. Then we have Yetis in the underground, which is the best reference of the lot, which refers back to the 1968 second Doctor story, The Web of Fear, which featured robot Yetis created by the Great Intelligence and took place in the London Underground. Pretty sure Kate Stewart mentioned Yetis in The Giggle. In fact, yes, she did mention Yetis in The Giggle. Number 14. Trinity Wells returns. It's a signature detail of Russell T Davies's Doctor Who for there to be all these snippets of in-universe news reports. He's been doing it right from the beginning of the 2005 revival, and someone who's always been part of these clips is American newsreader Trinity Wells. She first appeared in Aliens of London, reporting on the events of the UFO crashing into the Thames, and then went on to appear in stories like The Sounds of Drums, The End of Time, and most recently in The Giggle, where she had left her job job at AMNN, an American news network, to go solo. Now, it is a little bit sad to see that she now appears in support of people like Conrad, but it's always good to see Trinity Wells in Doctor Who. Number 13 to number 11. Now, this same sequence of news and TV show clips features a few people that maybe our non-UK viewers might not be familiar with. None of these people are actors playing fictional characters like Trinity Wells. These are all real TV personalities in the UK, playing themselves basically. So first up is BBC newsreader Rita Chakrabarti, TV presenter Joel Dommett, most famous for presenting The Masked Singer, along with a brief clip of Jonathan Ross, and then the One Show host Alex Jones. Now, The One Show is the BBC's regular early evening chat show and has had plenty of Doctor Who stars as guests over the years, including Russell T Davies himself. In fact, Jonah Hauer-King noted how it was so odd for him to go on The One Show as his character, having been on the show as himself as an actor in the past. Number 10. Conrad continues his smear campaign against UNIT and even goes so far as to publicly release the names and addresses of all UNIT employees. And during these scenes, we see a lot of social media pages and lots of names of social media users, including one for a user called Cheryl.Smith, who lives in Cardiff, which is Doctor Who's home base. Fittingly then, the profile picture for Cheryl.Smith is the real-life profile picture of Doctor Who graphic designer Georgie O'Boy. Now, Georgie assumably worked on the design team for all of these social media overlays and decided, you know what, I'm going to insert my own profile picture here. And quite honestly, who wouldn't do the same if we had the opportunity to put ourselves in Doctor Who? It wasn't me. Number 9. Everyone arrives at Unit Tower and Kate questions why the Shriek containment cube is outside on the helipad. And the Colonel, that is Colonel Sexy, tells her that it's because they've been ordered to send it to Geneva, which is a nod to the history of UNIT, with Geneva traditionally being the location of UNIT HQ. Number 8. Kate tells the team that the government is essentially raiding UNIT's inventory and notes how catastrophic it could be if UNIT's advanced tech went public. And she specifically mentions a time window and a transduction drive. Now, we saw UNIT's time window in action during the Season 1 finale, which allowed them to essentially travel back to the night Ruby was left at the church on Ruby Road. But the transduction drive is a little bit more interesting, as this may be Time Lord technology. A transduction barrier is a protective shield around Gallifrey that stops outside forces from entering and was an important plot point in the 4th Doctor story, The Invasion of Time. Now, it would be pretty cool if UNIT had somehow acquired Time Lord technology, or had engineered something that mimicked Time Lord technology. The time window certainly proved that they're capable, and this would also create a really interesting conflict between them and the Doctor. Alternatively though, the transduction drive might have nothing to do with Gallifrey whatsoever. But either way, maybe its mention here is foreshadowing for its potential use in the finale? Maybe? Number 7. So Ruby's final outfit in this episode is a pinstripe waistcoat and pinstripe trousers, and according to actress Millie Gibson, this may have been a nod to a certain Time Lord Victorious. As Gibson told Radio Times, quote, "My favourite outfit is towards the end of the episode. I genuinely thought they dressed me like David Tennant. I had a pinstripe waistcoat and pinstripe pants, and then a white shirt. I was literally just like David Tennant." Well, the 10th Doctor did of course love his pinstripes, with both his dark suit and his blue suit featuring them. And Ruby's outfit here certainly does feel 10th Doctor-esque. I don't know, maybe the costume designers knew that Millie was a fan of David Tennant and did this on purpose. Or maybe it was a total accident. Still, big up the pinstripes. We need more pinstripes in Doctor Who. Number 6. So we're still inside Unit Tower, and remember that we mentioned AMNN a minute or two ago? The American News Network and former employer of Trinity Wells is still in operation in the modern day and can be spotted on one of the giant screens inside the tower, reporting on the ongoing protests outside Unit headquarters. Number 5. So Kate and the rest of the UNIT team discover that Jordan is the mole who leaked all of their names and addresses and is actually aligned with Conrad. So they pull up his profile and discover quite a few concerning signs, including his subscriptions to dozens of radical blogs and also to something called Albian TV. Now, this is a reference to the Albion political party introduced in last season's 73 Yards, which was headed by Roger Ap Gwilliam, whose plan involved putting the world at risk of nuclear war. Needless to say, he was more than a little bit insane. Now, since the Albion Party and Roger Ap Gwilliam don't rise to power for another few decades, the Albion TV mentioned in Lucky Day is presumably some sort of precursor before the operation gained widespread political momentum. You can even see the Albion Party's slogan just to the right of Jordan's profile: bigger, better, bolder Britain. Number 4. Conrad infiltrates unit with the help of the big old traitor Jordan Lang, and as he rides the lift to the top of the building, we get this very specific shot of the lift from above. If this tickled something in your brain, it's because this type of lift shot is something of an icon in modern Doctor Who. It first appeared in the first episode of the revival, Rose, and was then literally reused in stories like World War III, New Earth, Doomsday, and even Torchwood Children of Earth. Basically, whenever a lift shot was needed, the team simply copy and pasted the original. And given its legendary status, I have no doubt that this similar shot in Lucky Day was a conscious choice on the part of the crew. Number 3. Now, the containment cube holding the Shriek is labelled as number 47. The number 47 is something of a running joke / recurring theme in the Star Trek franchise, and we know that Russell T Davies has enjoyed sprinkling some Star Trek eggies into these recent seasons. In fact, this isn't the first time the number 47 has appeared in relation to Unit, as it was also seen on the tail of the helicopter that transports 14 and Donna to Unit HQ in The Giggle, as well as on a poster earlier on in that episode as well. Number 2. Spoilers, sweeties! So the episode ends with the great scene between Conrad and the Doctor, where the Doctor does not hold back in his anger, even going so far as to reveal how and when Conrad dies. And we all immediately noticed when he said spoilers, right?
Do you want spoilers?
Even if it wasn't actually intended as a reference, that word has become so associated with River Song, the best character, that it automatically defaults to a reference every time we hear it. It became River's catchphrase from her very first appearance in Silence in the Library, where she refused to tell the Doctor any details about his future and would simply respond, spoilers. Number 1. It's that time of week again, folks. The latest edition of Flood Watch, Flood Watch, Flood Watch. So in this episode, she plays the governor of the prison Conrad is being held in, and lets him out of his cell because he's presumably part of her grand plan in some way. So there's a couple of possibilities and clues to mention here. First up is the fact that governor is actually capitalized in the episode's subtitles. Now, this could mean absolutely nothing, but it could also mean that she isn't just talking about the role she's currently playing, but that governor is maybe her title, like how various Time Lord characters have titles like the Master, the Doctor, the Corsair, and the Rani. Now, the Rani is essentially a renegade Time Lord similar to the Master, and weirdly enough, there is actually a link with the Rani and prison governors, as she assumed the role of prison governor in the Big Finish audio drama Planet of the Rani. That's a bit obscure and likely wasn't intentional, even if Mrs. Flood does turn out to be the Rani, but it would be quite a fun coincidence nonetheless, wouldn't it? Now, there's also the link with the prison governor in The End of Time, who conspired to bring the Saxon Master back to life. This again could be an unintentional link, but we do know that a mysterious someone picked up the Toymaker's gold tooth, which had the Master trapped inside. So could this be a hint that that someone was Mrs. Flood? What this scene would also appear to confirm is that Mrs. Flood is a villainous character, because there's been some debate as to whether she's actually good or evil. But surely aligning herself with Conrad leaves us with no doubt that she's opposed to the Doctor, right? As always though, let us know your theories down in the comments about Mrs. Flood, and we'll be back next week for more Flood Watch! And now it's time for the quickfire eggies, which are basically extra little details that we noticed but weren't entirely sure if they counted as actual Easter eggs, and we just thought they were cool. So first of all, Big Ben. It was destroyed in the summer of 2006 in Aliens of London. Then it was under construction in Christmas of 2006 in the Christmas Invasion, so presumably it's fully back to normal by New Year 2007, which is Lucky Day. For Auld Lang Syne, we hear that song in this episode because it was New Year, and of course we know that this became a very important song in Joy to the World for the Doctor and Anita. Now of course there were a lot of similarities between Conrad and Elton Pope and this episode and Love and Monsters. Elton telling his story through a vlog, and obviously we have Conrad here with his podcast. They both met the Doctor when they were young, they then bump into him again as an adult, tried to seek him out as an adult. This was clearly intentional, but there are a lot of similarities between Elton and Conrad. Now this one's just a personal one, but one of the unit staff members whose info is released is from Basingstoke, which, fun fact, is my hometown. And of course, the best Easter egg of all time. Apparently I have a doppelganger. Everyone who reached out and said, well done, I really saw you in Doctor Who. I really appreciate it, but it wasn't me. And just one more time, I'm going to call out, this was an actress called Calypso Cragg. So maybe go and give her some love, because I do feel a little bit bad that I've been getting so much attention for something I actually didn't do. And there you go, there are all the Easter eggs and references that we spotted in Lucky Day. Of course, make sure you go and check out our Ups and Downs review for this episode and our spoiler discussion, which are both out now on the channel. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.